Not gonna lie to you, it's 3:36 in the morning, and this has to be up in less than 12 hours. All right, so there's a few small things that we're gonna do in this one. We're gonna have our little research building actually produce some research points, or they could be science points, tech points, whatever it is you want to call them in your project. And then we'll be able to use these points in the future for maybe unlocking things, crafting different vehicles, maybe at different buildings, whatever it is you're going to use your points for. But we're going to be able to start gaining some of those. And in addition to that, I also want to set it so when we're able to move our camera here, when we're placing an object, we can't just start moving around on the camera, because maybe I want to put it here on the edge, and then the camera moves, and now all of a sudden I've placed it way over here instead. So when we're in our placing mode, the camera won't be able to move. That'll be a quick change for us there. So we're going to start with the camera, and to do that, I'm just going to go into my main script here, and in our placement mode enabler function, when that gets set, or when that gets called, I'm just going to go ahead and get my camera, which I think I'm just going to go ahead and just change it to, just get it at the top to make it easy. var camera, of course that's going to be a camera 2D type, and then we can just say camera.set process false, and that'll work for us. Now we're gonna have to set this true again later on. Down here, when we set placement mode false, then the camera's process will be set to true. And what this is basically going to do, if we take a look at our camera controls, is everything inside the process function here, when we set it to false, this is not going to run. So none of this code is going to do anything when it's set to false. And once it gets set back to true again, then we'll be checking for the edges of our screen to move it. Now we should be able to scroll still when we do this. So if we go ahead and check, and I did not set the camera, so I'm gonna have to click on my main Node 2D here, assign my camera to the camera from the export. There we go. So if we run it now and we grab a building, we cannot scroll, as you can see, off to the sides or anything. The scrolling does work because that's under input and not our process. And as you see, everything scales correctly. All right, and once we place that, we can then start moving on the edges of our screen again. All right, so that's just a quick thing for us to put in. All right, now my research building. So I click over there, and this does have a timer. And we are using a duplicate here. Okay. Do we want to make this script? Are we going to need to? I'm just wondering if we need to have it generic enough to put on multiple buildings, or if just having like one research, just having like a script dedicated to this building would be fine. Because we do have the hangar building here is a duplicated scene, so they are working with the same setup, but they would have completely different functionality. Because obviously if the hangar is going to have a timer, then it's going to be producing vehicles or whatever on a set timer, right? Whereas the research building would be gaining. So I guess we're going to go with completely different, because I don't think we're going to need anything aside from the research. If you do, I guess you can just make it a little more generic, but I'm just going to go ahead My research building, add a script, research building.gd. And we're going to need the timer. So I'm going to get my, whoops, that's going to be, unfortunately, lowercase, because capital is going to be our class. So I'll just go ahead and grab that. Have my timer assigned. We're going to need a wait time. Wait time, this is a float. And we'll say every, I don't know, what do you want to go with? 3? I want to go with maybe 3 seconds or maybe 2.5. We'll go with 3 and we'll see how that is. Obviously, it's going to depend on how you want to balance your game and how many points you get every X amount of time is going to be dependent on the pricing of your points for whatever you use them for, of course. I'll do another export here. Export var points. Yeah, points gain. It's going to be an int. Points to gain. I'm gonna every 3 seconds. 6 points. Could go with 1 point. Like, I don't know. We can always come back and tweak that later. So let's see. We could go ahead and connect our timer in through the UI. Is that the only? Might be the only signal we're gonna need. Yeah, so I guess it'll be fine. I'll go ahead and connect it through the editor. Timer on timeout. Right. And we want to add points. Now, here's the thing. We could have the points variable be associated to the building here. Obviously, we don't want to have it on a per building thing. So if we have a per building, then we're going to have to check how all of our buildings, see if they're a research building. If so, see how many points they have, add all those points up, and that would give us our total. Now, to avoid that, we have 2 options. We could go with a static variable, right? And after that, and then all research buildings are going to share this variable. So if one building adds to it, all buildings have added to it, then we only need to get one research building. Doesn't really matter which one, and we'll be able to get the points. However, I'm thinking about what if we had some kind of maybe we had some kind of like nature, some kind of natural disaster happen, and maybe we only had 2 buildings and they both got destroyed. You know, maybe it's an earthquake or something. Then would we lose those points, right? Because if we have to destroy the building, then rebuild it, we wouldn't have those points anymore. Or would we? See, that I'm not 100% sure with. On here. So I think the safer route I'm going to do that is I'm going to go ahead and put our research points into our first global. I'm going to go into my script folder, right click and just create a new one. New script. This will be my global. I can open up the right one. There we go. And it's going to be our variable. We can call it research. Whoops. Points. That's of course going to be an integer. It's going to start out at 0. I'm going to go to project settings. Go to auto load. Select. Oops, not a scene. We don't need a scene to load. We just want our script. Global script. Add. I'll keep the name global. That's fine. And then back to our research building. on the timer timeout, we can do global dot research points plus equals points gain is what we want. Didn't even notice that until now. Alright, so our timer is connected. I'm going to go into the ready. I'm going to set the timer dot wait time. It's going to be equal to our wait time. So whatever number we put in there. And then that's all we're going to need there. So we can go ahead and do timer dot start. And just to make sure this is happening as consistent as we want, I'm going to go ahead global dot research points, print that out, and let's take a look. Right, zero. So we're constantly having 0 printed out. Why is that? Inspection points gained is set to 0. Makes sense. Thought I had it on something like 6. I guess I changed my mind on that. You know what? We'll change it to 2. And we'll check it here in the scene. Now notice how we don't have any errors within this scene itself. And alright, so our count looks like it's working, but we have no errors within the scene itself, and that's ideally what you want. You don't want a scene on its own to cause issues, even if it works. Say we had issues with our research building because maybe we wanted to get trying to get a node or something that doesn't exist until it's inside the main, put inside the main branch here, our main scene. You'd want to minimize that, and there are ways that you could do that. Luckily for us, we don't have to worry about any of that. But what we can do now is test it, make sure it actually works within our main scene properly. For us to go ahead and add in. All right, so we can see no points are being added. We know that's no points are being printed out yet. So I'll go ahead, place the hanger. Okay, everything seems fine. We'll go ahead and place our research building. That should gain us points, as well as print them out to our output. And we should see. Okay, 2, 4. Well, let's see what happens when we put another one. We're going to go up faster. 8, 10. Oh, yeah, there we go. So if we were to keep putting all these research buildings down, we're going up research points quite a lot now. So that's going to be a little dependent. Again, that's going to come down to you balancing these numbers based on how many research buildings you want to allow, and how, I guess we can say, expensive the use case is going to be for your points. But there we go. We know those are at least working. We can come back to the actual numbers later. All right. And I think I want to set the tab button to make my UI appear. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and animate it. So I'm going to put it off screen. When I hit tab, it'll pull up, and I'll be able to do my building in that. And then I can hit tab again, and it'll go away. So let's go ahead and do that. And all we're going to need inside of our item box here, just going to need an animation player. And if it was just this one item, then we could just tween it back and forth. But I'm going to use an animation player just in case we do add other UI elements that we want to function on the same key press to show and hide. We can easily just come to the animation and add it in real quick without maybe adding more lines of code than necessary. So animation player. I'm going to come down, new animation. I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call it show UI. So I'm going to move it to 0.5, I think that should be fine. I'll test that in a moment, but we'll go to 0.5 and make a key for the entire scroll container. If I'm not mistaken, when I move the scroll container, everything inside of it's going to move. Do I want to reset track? No, I do not. If we take that whole thing, that is going to move, and we actually probably want to use the item box and not the scroll. So that's actually going to be unfortunate. Let's go back up. Let's say the item box. Where we at? Layout, transform, position. Grab that, create, and that's because I have the color rect behind it to kind of distinguish it. Control. No, not from that point. Alt. There we go. And hold Shift. So I'm holding Alt so I can grab a node plus its children. In this case, otherwise, if I were to just click and grab, you can see I'm grabbing one of its children instead, which obviously is not ideal. So if you didn't know about that, you can hold Alt and click and you'll grab that node plus its children instead of grabbing one of its children. And if I'm going to hold Shift here, because you can see I can move it all over, I'll hold Shift, and now I have to move it in a straight line. So I'm just going to go ahead and move it down until it's off screen. We'll say there, and I'm gonna have to redo that again because I gotta move my key. There we go. They may be there. Rekey that position, and let's see. What? Oh, where's my key? Scroll container. No. Go away. Just want the item box here. Item box down. Key our position. There we go. If we're to run along that, okay, plays. All right, cool. Yeah, I think 0.5 is enough, so I'm going to go ahead and shrink that down. So I'm going to say 0.5 for the total length of my animation. I'm going to create a new keybind. And I'm just going to call this, I guess I'll just call it UI for now. Add a button, hit tab, hit OK. So now inside of, we could go inside the main node, but I think I'm going to go right into the canvas layer since that's what's going to control our actual UI here. So I'm going to put a script here for my UI that's going to go inside my scripts folder, and I'm not going to call it canvas layer. I'm going to call it GUI and GUI for the name of my script. And I'm going to go ahead and do a function input event. I'm going to put an underscore before event so I don't get a warning about it not being used. And we'll say if input.is action. So this is where we don't want to press. We want to do a just press or just released. So let's go with a, I guess it doesn't really matter. It just depends on if you want to trigger when the button goes down or where your button comes up. I'm just going to do it when the button goes down. So action just pressed UI. I am going to play the animation. And I'll just call this anim player dot play. This is going to be the name of our animation, which is show UI, and that did not autocomplete because I'm actually going to go ahead and fill them in at the top. So export var anim player, and that's going to be an animation player type. So now I can go ahead and just assign it to my animation player, and that should work. Now this is going to have to go ahead and keep track of whether or not our UI is actually showing. So I'm going to create a variable called UI shown. It's going to be a bool. We'll set that to false by default. And we'll simply say if UI shown, add in player dot play backwards show UI. Turn out of there. Otherwise, we're gonna do show UI. Oh, and we actually need to set our variables. UI shown equals true in this case, because if our UI isn't already shown, then we're going to play the animation to show it. We're going to set our variable to be true. If it's true, next time we hit tab, then this if statement is going to be true. We're going to come in and we're going to play the show UI animation, but we're going to play it backwards. And then we should set our variable to false. And the reason we're returning here is because if we didn't, then once our if statement has been completed here, set it to false, then we're going to go ahead and show the animation again and then set it back to true. Now, instead of return, of course, we could just come in and use an else block and indent this in, and that would work fine. But I'm going to go with the return method here, and we can go ahead and test that. I'm here, I hit tab, it shows up, hit tab, it goes away. Again, tab, still move our camera around, grab my building, and we can no longer move. Place it, we can move around, tab, it goes away. And even when we're placing, if we want to place like underneath of our UI here, we can just hit tab, it goes away, and there we go. So if our UI is actually blocking our mouse from doing anything, which in this case it's not, but in the future it might happen if you're going to have menus and that showing up on the screen. And if it does, we have a way to just make the UI disappear now and able to place our buildings and gain our points. Alright, so our building now does something. We have UI that's animated now at the press of a button, and we've stopped our camera from moving around when we're trying to place things. Alright, I think that's going to do it for this one. If you have any ideas of what setting or feature, mechanic, or whatever that you want to see in the next few, then go ahead and let me know. And if it lines up well enough with what we already have, then maybe we'll go ahead and do that one next. Alright, that's it for this one. Take care, have yourselves a good one, and I'll see you guys next time.